267. Drifting Classes. Chalcedon Report number 64, December 1970. When Louis XIV came to the throne, he felt that the monarchy was threatened by France's powerful nobility. One of his central policies, thus, was to undercut the power of the nobility. He attached the nobility to his court and gave them a great variety of functions which seemed to confer favours on them. As Dr. Wolf remarks, it became important who gave the king his shirt, who held his candle at night, the service of his table, even the bringing of the pierced chair, took on solemn overtones. What Louis did was to separate the reality and the mystique of power and position, so that, finally, in the next century, the nobility had become of a parasitical class without meaning to the real life of the nation. John B. Wolfe, Louis XIV, New York, New York, W. W. Norton, 1968, pages 270 and 271. From powerful lords who managed vast estates and helped govern France, the nobility was reduced to social butterflies who gambled, danced, and drifted from one sexual escapade into another. What Louis XIV had done was to destroy the nobility as an upper class and reduce them to a lower class mentality. From being a future-oriented group of leaders whose planning might run counter to the wishes of the crown, the nobility was reduced to a group of ineffectual, present-oriented incompetents who were a hindrance to the life of the nation. This process was furthered by two things. First, the association of work with something beneath the dignity of a gentleman, and second, the secularization of society. To consider the first, a gentleman came to mean a man who did not work but lived off an estate. This meant, parasitically, that he lived off the past accomplishments and work of his family and the present work of his underlings. This meant that a gentleman was clearly lower class, that is, not future-oriented. Rather, he was intensely present-oriented, sensitive to matters of dress, appearance, and impressions made on others. The gentleman lived for the moment, and to be heedless of the future was made into a virtue. As early as in the days of Louis XIV, fortunes were gambled away carelessly at the tables of Versailles. Earlier in the Renaissance, Castiglione had set forth the standard for the courtier, a relativistic standard. The important thing was not a faith, but an impression made on others. Not meaning, but the impact of selling oneself, salesmanship on a courtly level. In the 18th century, the expression of this faith was the dandy, and in the 20th century, it was the existentialist who has formulated the same faith into a philosophy. Thus, the French novelist Alain Robbe-Grillet feels that nothing is so fatal to literature as a concern with saying something. According to Robbe-Grillet, the world is neither significant nor absurd. It is, quite simply. Time, December 2nd, 1966, page 419. This ties in with the second aspect, the secularization of society by humanism. If God is denied, then man lives in a world without meaning, a world without law, without standards, and without purpose and direction. The future offers no grand design unfolded by God. The culmination of humanism is relativism. Since every man is his own God and law, then no one law is truth, since every man is his own private truth and law. The only thing that matters is the moment, since existence is all that man has in a world without meaning. In a relativistic world, where absolute standards and law are denied, men look at the world through out-of-focus binoculars. Everything is blurred or unseeable. Relativism destroys vision and standards. It produces a present-oriented, lower-class mind. A lower-class society becomes a political society. Because the majority of men have become lower-class and are incompetent in the basic task of social planning, the state is given the functions of individuals, and state planning replaces individual and social planning. Where people are unwilling or incapable of planning for the future, this task is handed over to the state. But statist planning is political planning, and is thus present-oriented and lower class. The purpose of status planning, whatever its declared goals, is to gain votes and assure political power. The state, therefore, aggravates the already existing evil. It adds to the incompetence of a lower-class people the burden of a radically lower-class national policy. How extensive this deterioration of functioning power is on the status level was indicated by statistics issued by the Vice President Emeritus and former business manager of a Middle Western university, according to which $1 of relief to a needy individual through a private volunteer agency costs 7 cents, through a municipal welfare, 27 cents, through a state welfare agency, $1, and through a federal welfare agency, $2. Review of the News, November the 4th, 1970, page 20. Status planning, or welfare, being always primarily political planning, the political cost is high, whether it be welfare or road construction. The more society is politically governed, the more incompetent it becomes in coping with its problems. The lower class mentality also dominates education, and to the degree that education is state-controlled, to that degree it represents education into a lower class world and mind. The academic community today is an example of the lower class mind. It is relativistic, existential, and politically oriented in its problem-solving. The academic community has steadily withdrawn from the world with contempt. All too often, where men cannot compete successfully, there they run down the competition by contempt. The academic community thus approaches the world only with revolutionary contempt and hatred. A century ago, scholars wrote for the world. Thus, the great historians expected to be read by literate men everywhere. Since then, the academician has progressively written for other scholars, not for the public. He has written to gain academic approval, not to apply knowledge to problems. The scholar is usually so busy protecting his statements from possible criticism by other scholars that all too often he says little or nothing. The Marxists have at least had the courage of their convictions and have sought to be relevant. Much of their influence on students has been due to the fact that they have at least been plain-spoken. Education as a whole, however, because it has become relativistic, existentialist, and state-controlled, has been the major means of creating a lower-class society. A society can drift into a lower-class culture and, in pride, maintain that it is on the high road to greatness. Spain gives us a classic example of this. Ferdinand and Isabella united their kingdoms and sought to make Spain, quote, Spanish, end quote, and Catholic. Ferdinand almost certainly was in part Jewish. The, quote, Moors, end quote, were expelled. The number of Muslim conquerors who came to Spain much earlier numbered only 25,000 at the most. By 1311, of the 200,000 Muslims in Granada, only 500 were of Arabic descent, according to an Arabic document. Powerful Muslim, Jewish, and Christian families regularly intermarried to consolidate their power and alliances. All were equally, quote, Spanish, end quote. But in the name of quote-unquote purity, the Moors were expelled, then the Jews, and finally the Germans, who had helped Charles V bring Spain to greatness. And only, quote, Spaniards, end quote, were left, of supposedly pure blood. The question of pure blood could never be asked of the royal family. In brief, only, quote, gentlemen, end quote, were left. The businessmen and the farmers of calibre had been run out. As a Catholic historian here has pointed out, the results were disastrous. The Spaniards did not cultivate the land. Agriculture in Spanish hands declined catastrophically. Until the 19th century, there was no such thing, strictly speaking, as an economy. In the 14th and 15th century, the Spanish left this to the Germans, the Ravensburg Trading Society, and the Foggers, and then to the Flemish. Later, they had to leave it to the French, the Dutch, the English, and the Americans. The Spanish built cities, monasteries, and palaces as settings in the world theatre and as suitable trappings for its world spectacle. Friedrich here, The Intellectual History of Europe, Cleveland, Ohio, World Publishing Company, 1966, page 255. Spain lived parasitically off its colonies. Its standards became those of the picaresque novel they produced, the clever opportunist who lives without work. This same prolonged drifting cannot occur now. Every modern country virtually is a modern, quote, Spain, end quote. It is substituting grandiose ideas and plans for production, and the result is a steady decline everywhere into socialism. But socialism is by nature imperialistic. Since socialism cannot produce goods successfully and economically, it must expropriate. Expropriation at home is followed by expropriation abroad. The imperialism of the Soviet Union is a necessity. It is its means of gaining fresh capital. As the other powers move deeper into socialism, they too will extend their area of expropriation. Just as a lower class man steals casually to make ends meet, so too does the lower class state. Our answer to this problem cannot be political. That is the lower class answer. This does not mean that we abandon politics, but that we recognize that politics is a reflection of the life of the people. The answer is essentially religious and moral. No election can make men future-oriented. Only a living faith in the sovereign God can do this. A scholar, in analysing the thinking of colonial Americans, had remarked on their amazing confidence. Whatever their problems, they were confident that men who moved in obedient faith to the sovereign God would triumph, that neither the hostile forces of nature, Indians, nor a tyranny in England could long survive in a battle with God's free men. Very simply, they believed that victory is built into the universe for God's people. They were thus future-oriented. They built for the future. They kept diaries and records faithfully for unborn generations. Reverend Samuel Hopkins dedicated his Treatise on the Millennium, that is, on the era of the triumph of the gospel, to the people who should be living then. He expected that golden era to come not too long after the year 2000. In 1930, in the Book of Journeyman, Albert J. Knox said, "We have hopefully been trying to live by mechanics alone, the mechanics of pedagogy, of politics, of industry, and commerce. And when we find that it cannot be done, and that we are making a mess of it, instead of experiencing a change of heart, we bend our wits to devise a change in mechanics, and then another change, and then another. Men are trying to enter the kingdom of God by manipulation rather than regeneration. Men have moved in fear rather than in faith and the courage of faith." In 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 5, we are told that God spared not the old world before the flood, but saved Noah. The word translated saved can be better rendered guarded. In the face of all the hostility of that world, we are told that Noah was guarded or preserved because he had been called to a new world and to rebuild in that world, and Noah was faithful to that call. Men who seek to survive are doomed. Their interest is in their own skin, and they are a form of lower-class mentality. Men whose desire is to rethink and to rebuild under God are men geared to life and faithful to the Lord of life. Whatever men may do, God cannot be dislodged from the throne of the universe. If God is our Saviour, then He is also our Sustainer and Vindicator. We can face the future in the confidence of His government, and we must at all times think, act, and rebuild in terms of that certainty. If God be for us, who can be against us? Romans chapter 8, verse 31.